range again. In the 1940s, 1940 itself, after the Battle of Dunkirk and the evacuations of the British troops, they lost a lot of their firearms and weaponry. They had to come up with a replacement. They needed things that could be made quickly, and they were also going to support the French resistance in France, so they needed something that was easy to produce. What they came up with was the Sterling submachine gun, or the Sten gun, as it was known. Very simple submachine gun, 9mm, and it's been used after the war by various countries. In fact, when I joined the Army in Canada, we used it, and it was used right up through to the 80s. Now, there was an interesting version that came out in the 60s that was basically used by the police, and we have a version of it here. We have Stu here with us who's going to tell us about this. Stu, come on in.
Sure.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
This is very familiar. I think both of us started with this, or a version of this,
exactly,
in the Army. But this is not a submachine gun.
No, it is not. It was actually started its life from the factory as a semi-automatic only firearm. Because as you probably already know, as I do, there are Sterlings like this, but it's full auto or full auto converted. None of those you can bring to the range and shoot. But since this has been manufactured from the factory as a semi-auto only,
right,
the two positions
and
only,
as you can see, she's got the two positions of safe and fire only.
and you can take this to the range as a restricted firearm.
So another thing I've noticed is the interesting finish. Is this factory finish, or is this a refinish?
This is a factory, what they call this a crinkle finish. And as you probably already know, that the military ones, whether it be the British or even the Canadian ones, had the parkerized finish. And I took this to the range a week or two ago or so, and I had some other black rifles there in the sun. In the sun, everything else got hot, even the magazines. But with this in the sun was actually almost cool to the touch, because I think this here is almost like a anti-reflective surface and doesn't hold the heat.
Interesting.
So this was actually very cool to hold.
Now, one other thing I notice, barrel length. This is what I'm used to for this type of gun, the barrel length. Now, I have seen extended barrels. Is that because they are converted from full auto and they've got to extend the barrel, or do you know why, the history behind the extended barrel versions that I've seen?
The ones that you've probably seen were the ones in the US, if I remember correctly, right?
Okay.
And what happens is that to skirt some of the laws of being a short-barreled rifle, they had to extend or remake the barrel so it doesn't, so it circumvents that.
So here's a little bonus we have up on the Americans on not destroying the look of the gun.
You'll have some people though that have this police carbine, and they will weld the stock, get a lengthened barrel, and then it becomes a non-restricted firearm.
Ah, okay. So, fires the same way as the original. Unfortunately, due to the magazine restrictions we have here, 5 rounds only. She is a 9mm, firing the standard 9mm by 19 parabellum round. Blowback action. Can you explain the difference between the blowback and what a lot of people would know as the locking bolt or the forward firing, or forward action?
The blowback entails that it doesn't lock, unlike, say, for instance, an AR-15 or, say, a Kalashnikov or SKS. This here also employs something called API, or Advanced Primer Ignition. So I don't know if you can take a look, but you can actually see the bolt, and the firing pin actually is machined out of the bolt. And so what happens is that on the forward movement of the bolt will strip off around from the magazine, proceed to chamber it, and almost when it's fully into battery, the fixed firing pin will detonate the primer. Expanding gases will cause the bullet to go out and the bolt to go rear, and that's how the cycle gets completed.
And this is a very basic firearm. Besides the body, you've got the barrel. Take the cap off at the back, you've got a spring, and then you've got the bolt and the cocking handle. That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
Very simple to make, very simple to maintain, and fairly reliable until she starts getting worn, as we've seen over the years.
One of the interesting facets on manufacturing that they had to do is they had to pre-bend the tube of the receiver and weld the pistol grip on it. Because what happens is that if you try to do it without it, the excessive heat would warp the tube in the wrong position. So they would bend it the wrong way, weld it, and then it would become straight again. So that being probably the only little trick that they had to do back in the 60s to
Right.
produce this.
Well, let's see how she is. We got an assortment of magazines here, various sizes, but they're all loaded with 5 rounds.
Sure.
So let's give it a shot. Probably going to bring back some memories. It's been, well, since 89, 90 since I last fired these.
That's correct.
So we'll start with a 5-round mag. Now, an interesting little point, if anyone knows their firearms, and I'll just take this out for a sec. If you collapse the butt, and picture me in all white armor, and a few modifications on this. This was the Stormtrooper blaster from the original Star Wars movies. And I think, as far as I know, from the modern ones as well, it's a version of it. So that's where Lucas got his ideas for a lot of the weaponry, was using modified modern surplus guns and stuff. So it's kind of fun to think that you're firing a little blaster.
And a lot of people don't realize that during the filming of Star Wars, the guns were actually still live, and they'd actually use blanks to help time the blast sequence for the effects.
And that's true, because I have seen the raw footage where you can see the casings flying out.
So before you put the magazine in, do you want to put the fixed bag in?
Oh, that's the other thing we have here. In case you want to get super close in combat, you can actually, where's the lug?
Yeah, and just push the button in to lock it in place.
You can actually fix a bayonet to this as well. Not sure exactly where you would use it. I guess close combat, although I do know that these were popular in Burma, probably in the Philippines and Asia during the war, so very close combat in jungles and stuff like that. But I think for firing it, we'll take it off. And we'll just go like that. So, and you absolutely know at one point I am going to try it. I'll fold it up one-handed just to see what it was like. So she's cocked back, simple cocking handle. Let's see how she does. The thing you hear about this and you feel about it really is you do get that feel of it moving.
They're almost coup contra coup, the back and forth motion.
You can feel it, you can hear it, the vibrations travel through it. It's a familiar feeling, but it's a very weird one I haven't had in a while. Interesting.
Nice double taps.
You like those, eh? So she is fairly accurate. You can put them on there. Mm-hmm. She's going to lock forward every time you do it. See how you can do with it.
Sure.
I will mention, and we were talking about this because I'm sure someone's going to say something. Given the way the action works and the trigger mechanism works, there is the chance that she may skip over the sear on the recoil, and that's kind of what's happened once or twice. So it is a semi-automatic weapon only. It is not full auto, but sometimes it does skip over and you do get that second shot going off before it catches again.
Well, the problems is that the different weights of bullets people use and the load. Traditionally, there would be a separate ammunition just for a submachine gun, and the action would be forced a whole lot further to the rear to ensure that the sear will catch on the way back.
So bullet weight, powder load, it all has an effect on what's happening here.
That's correct.
So I think what we're going to do is I am going to try firing it one-handed. Now we are not using Federal here, we're using reloads that I've gotten. So it's probably having a little bit of an effect on it. But there's not a lot of recoil with this. If you shoot a lot of guns, one thing you'll notice, even with the same ammo, the recoil varies from gun to gun, and it can be quite significant. On this one, there is not a lot, so it should be fairly easy to manipulate with it collapsed. Oops. Collapsed up. So let's give it a shot. We'll see how she does. Although it is hard to aim. So, as Obi-Wan said, it is pretty clumsy and random as a blaster. Well, Stu, thanks for bringing this one out.
No problem.
It's a lot of fun. This gets me, putting a bayonet on a submachine gun, but whatever they were thinking at the time.
Well, another thing that people may not realize is that this looks like a bayonet for your FN, but it's got a larger ring, and it's actually they originally used jungle carbine bayonets, and they would fit. And then eventually Sterling made a purpose-built bayonet just for the Sterling.
Right, right. Very interesting. Nice little piece of history.
It is.
Thanks.